G'day everyone, welcome to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. Today we are going to be taking a look at another past hero of the month. Specifically, we're going to dive into the 5-star legendary blue heroine, Klara, the Furious Bride. So Klara has been in the game for a little bit now. She first appeared as the featured hero of the month back in May 2022. Today, however, the only place that you can get a copy of Klara is from the Manor of Legends portal, which rolls around once every 4 weeks. This portal does, however, have some of the worst odds for summoning a specific hero in the game. So we can see it comes in at a 1% chance for a featured hero and just a 0.9% chance for one of the unfeatured heroes. So to put it in perspective, if you were to do 100 summons in this portal, you would have, across those 100 summons, a 63.4% probability to get either of the featured heroes of the month. You'd have a 59.5% probability of getting one of the unfeatured heroes of the month. And if instead you were targeting a specific hero, there's just a 39.4% chance for a specific featured hero and just a 2.6% probability of getting a specific unfeatured hero. So not great odds, and those odds are just going to diminish further as more heroes are added to this portal. In terms of Klara's artwork, let's just dive across to my roster right quick and we can take a look. So there is her artwork. So she is a Furious Bride and she does look very, very scary. I mean, there's an old adage which is, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and yeah, goodness forbid you scorn a woman on her wedding day, you're in for all kinds of hurt. So that is her artwork. She does look, as I said, right royally pissed off, and you know, you've got all of the typical accoutrements of a bride. You've got something bright, something blue, what is it, something borrowed, something blue, something old, something new, I think is the saying. But anyway, we've got the blue stuff there. We've also got, you know, the veil and the white dress and so on and so forth. So feel free to pause it if you wish, but otherwise, let's continue on with the review because I got some scrolling to do. Now, Klara, as is the case with all of the old heroes of the month, she does not actually have a family bonus at the time of this recording. SGG haven't added one to old heroes of the month. Maybe down the track they might do something, but at the time of this review, there isn't anything for Klara or any of the other heroes of the month. In terms of her personal stats, Klara comes in with 706 attack, 706 defense, and 1,381 HP. So the skewing is non-existent, right? She's bang up the dead middle of the road. She's the dotted line in the middle of the road. That's where she sits. Her power is a little bit low, so her overall stat distribution isn't quite as high as some of the more newer heroes. You've got Hex coming in at 730 power and Topaz at 742 as two examples. By comparison, you know, you've got Klara there at 692. So that's just indicating the power creep that's happened since she was released almost 2 years ago now. Her charge speed is set to 45 speed, which is average and requires 11 tiles to charge or 6 ghosted tiles. The speed break happens at speed 50, so it does need +5 speed, which you can do using either of the blue 5-star speed guns in the game. You've got the Regalizer Magnum and the Ice Breath Saw. Both of those give you +9. The double break needs +13, which you just can't achieve at the moment, so there's no real relevance for getting the speed node on her class tree. On the topic of class, she is a member of the Demolitions class, which grants her the chance to shell shock the enemy, removing all buffs from the target whenever that... gives a chance to shell shock the enemy and remove buffs from the enemy targeted when dealing damage to them. So the removal of buffs will also trigger an increase of 15% damage per each buff that's removed, and it applies a flat 50% increase in the damage from normal damage sources. Personally, I do love the Shell Shock ability. Not only is it additional damage, but it is also a free chance at debuffing the enemy as well, without the need to charge or fire special skills. So I typically give +1 to most of my Demolitions class heroes just to activate the chance for that Dispel and that free bonus damage as well. In terms of a specific emblem path, you will note that my copy of Klara is not maximum emblemed. I don't have too many emblems on her at all. But if I was to emblem her, I would probably be going... Look, an argument can be made to go either way. You can either go the attack route to improve her damage output, and so the attack route looks something like this. All right, we're just going left and right to pick up the attack nodes at each point on her tree. I would stop it at plus 18. There is no need to go any further than that. The 19 node is not valid on either side, and the 20 node is a lot of emblems just for a small attack improvement. But that would be the path I'd follow if you were to go an attack route. All right. There is an equally viable argument you can make to go a defense route. So attack path gives you more damage output. Defense path gives you more survival, and more survival means you're more likely to fire and use your special skill. So the defense path looks like this. It's basically just the inverse of what we did on the last path. All right. In this case, you can probably stop at plus 18. That's the last defense HP node. But you can also just pick up the 18th one as well, just for some free attack. But those are sort of the two paths you can follow. Either option, completely viable. All right. You can have just as good an argument to go either direction. The choice is ultimately going to come back to your playstyle and what you think Klara needs to work again in with your teams. Heading back over to the portal, and I'll scroll and find Klara again, and we can go through her special skill. So her special skill is titled Forever Hold Your Peace, and at level 10 skill and 45 charge speed, it will deal 200% damage to all enemies. It will then apply a minus 28% charge generation to ailment to all enemies for 3 turns, and provide a plus 46% attack buff to all allies, which is increased by a further 17% per each hit they receive for 3 turns. Yeah, so that's kind of her skill. So let's have a bit more of a look at the each item, starting with the direct damage. So damage, as always, we can calculate it. It's just simpler if we were to go the route of doing attack power, because it takes out some of the randomness and the variability in their special skills. So attack power is just their attack stat, 706. Multiplied by the percentage in her special skill, which is 200%. And we can see that on Klara, that comes out as an attack power of 1,412. If we normalize that against the 11 tiles to charge her if we normalize that against her speed, which requires 11 tiles to charge, we get an attack power per tile of 128 per enemy as well. So an AoE 5 hitter does that on all 5 enemies. So that is popping her there at number 3 of the 9 DOA 5 blue hitters, right? The best option is Sapphire. Sapphire comes in at 161. Then we've got War Chest at 144 and Klara then at 128. There's a couple other options that are worse than Klara on the list. You know, you've got Guppy at 123, Tremor at 122, Nightblade at 113, so on and so forth. So there's a couple options in there. And yeah, Klara comes in at number 3. I've just noticed an error on that chart. It has Tremor and Guppy around the wrong way, but I'll fix that at a later date. Yeah, it is worth pointing out as well, if we were to take that maximum attack buff, so the plus 131%, her attack power comes out massively higher. It comes out at 168. So there is a bit of an improvement there under the maximum attack buff condition. So yeah, just something to kind of know about. Moving on from the damage, the next part of her skill is the charge debuff ailment. So all enemies get minus 28% charge generation for 3 turns. So a couple of things to note with this. Number one, obviously, it's not an immediate effect. It is not as instantaneous as a charge cut like you have on someone like Dragon Fist, nor is it necessarily as effective as Mindless Attack or Insanity, which completely removes the hero's charge. But charge generation or negative charge generation is a very, very, very useful effect. And it is very, very useful in situations where the enemy heroes have the potential to gain a lot of charge very quickly. So I'm talking about situations where there's a big cascade coming, or where they've got passive charge coming from minions or from like Pulse or from special skills like Zigzag, or even charge buffs like you get from someone like Jocasta, or even Senya's passive charge generation. This effect is very useful at combating those ongoing ailments or buffs, sorry. So how this effect works is it operates by reducing the charge units received by the affected hero from all charge sources. So I mentioned them all then. You've got tiles, buffs, minions, passive, all of that sort of thing. So instead of receiving 1 charge unit per tile, afflicted enemies will instead receive just 0.72 charge units per tile. So to give 2 examples of how this works, or how this might actually play out, a hero that has a charge speed of 68, they are normally a fast hero needing only 8 tiles to charge. When affected by Klara's charge debuff, they instead need 11 tiles to charge. Not 8, 11. So it adds a triple break of speed onto that hero's charge rate. Similarly, if we've got a 45 speed hero like Klara, they normally need 11 tiles to charge. Instead, under this minus 28% charge ailment, they will need 15 tiles to get to the necessary charge units to use their special skills. So I find that while it is not as instantaneous as charge cuts or any of those other ones, the charge degeneration or charge ailment is actually extremely useful. I find it more useful in battle situations where you've got to move a lot of tiles in a very short period of time, because it doesn't remove an immediate threat, but it removes a long-term threat from the fight. Moving on from the charge debuff, the last part of her skill is the Berserk attack buff. So all allies are getting a plus 46% attack, with a further plus 17% increase per every time they are hit during the next 3 turns. And this effect, as we see on the extra information, can stack to a maximum of plus 131% attack. So this effect is what I call a Berserk buff, or a Berserk style attack buff, which just basically means that it increases the more the hero is hit. So they see more and more red mist, they get angrier and angrier, and their attack power goes up and up and up. So it's not the clearest of wording, don't get me wrong, but essentially every hero on your team gets a plus 46% attack buff. It's a flat increase. Each time they get hit, they get an additional plus 17% attack. This can happen a total of 5 times, giving them the total maximum attack buff of 131%. So you've got the 46% base plus 5 instances of 17% comes out at 131%. Now, I did touch on earlier the impact that this buff has on the attack power per tile. So it takes her from 128 attack power per tile up to 168. But to further demonstrate it, the actual damage improvement comes out at being roughly 60% additional damage when you've got the base attack buff of 46% attack. So at a minimum, her buff is giving you 60% more damage than a situation without the attack buff. If you can get it up to the maximum 131% attack buff, the damage increase is roughly 210% additional damage. So it's the normal, that amount of damage with 2.5 or 2.1 times more of that on top, which is pretty damn sweet, really. That's a lot of extra damage. So overall, I do think that Klara is a fairly okay hero. In the right team setup, she can be extremely beneficial as a supporting hero, giving both damage increase and also charge control onto the enemy heroes. She has admittedly been outclassed by a newer hero called Sapphire, who kind of does everything that Klara does, but just is a little bit better at it. So there is a version 2, essentially, of Klara, but base version of Klara is still pretty damn sick and very much worth leveling, in my honest opinion. So for Klara's grading, I am going to give her a B grade for raid and war attacks. She could be higher if she had a little bit better stats, is pretty much where she sits at the moment. Her skill is pretty good and all of that, so I'm going to give her a B grade for attack situations. For war machines, I'm going to give her a B+. The charge generation debuff and the attack buff are both very useful for war machines, both of which are helpful, so I'm going to give her a slight improvement there. For the eventing, I'm also going to give her a B+. Again, she's helping you with damage output, so that helps you compete, and it also helps you complete the events for a more casual player. For raid and war defense situations, I'm going to give her a B grade for these defense situations. Probably her best spot is in the flank position, ideally on the left side. This will allow her to charge while being a little bit sheltered behind the tank, and also able to fire her skill and affect all her allies to do more damage, the charge debuff, all of which is happening about the midpoint of the battle ultimately. In the 3 tournament settings, so in Bloody Battles, I'm going to give her a B grade for attack and a B grade for defense. In the buff boosters, I am going to ratchet her up a little bit, so I'm going to give her an A- for her attack grade and a B+ for her defense grade on the buff booster tournaments. So she does create buffs in the form of attack buffs, so it's the 46% plus an extra 20% for that buff, and it can go up to like 151%. So very, very useful. It's sort of stacking attack buffs on each other, which is very good. The final tournament setting is charge attack, which is where her speed is increased from 45 up to 65. So she does get a hefty speed improvement. So I'm actually going to give her an A- for charge attack grade and an A- for her charged attack defense grading. So overall, that comes out as getting a B+ for her overall attack grade and a B+ for her overall defense grade. And that concludes the content that I have for this review of Klara. As always, these are just my personal opinions and thoughts on these heroes. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback, so please do jump down to the comments section of this video and leave me a note. I try to read and respond to as many of you as I can. If you found this stuff to be useful, good, helpful, and all of that, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel and all of that, but most importantly, share the video around, because chances are, if this sort of thing is useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to the other people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me for this review. I do hope I will see you again soon in another video, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!